G'day all you wonderful people, welcome to Adventure Together. My name's Al, trail name Lookout, and these are my friends, I think. I'm
Pisa. I'm Bushwack.
I'm Worth It.
Loto.
Which is my name?
Forget, sorry.
I'm Stitches.
And I'm Jackpot.
Awesome, and today we're going to talk about the Sierras and our Sierra experience, seeing as we have now completed it. We're sitting in South Lake Tahoe, and
Woo!
Yay!
Everybody else wants to cheer for this?
An impromptu cheer, and we are very, very proud of ourselves, and we're going to share all of our knowledge of our experience with you guys, so that you know what's going on when you enter the Sierras in a high snow year. So I have a list of questions, a whole script, and we're going to talk about those things. So firstly, ladies and gents, how do you feel?
So relieved.
Exhausted?
Exhausted. Yeah.
Tired?
Happy?
Oh, you're happy.
I'm feeling,
I'm happy.
proud.
It's over.
Yeah.
Feeling proud?
I'm feeling proud.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm also very proud of all of us. Yeah.
I think right now I feel a sense of accomplishment, but during this Sierra, I felt a lot of negative things. Waking up early, walking on snow all day, camping on snow, and navigating each individual obstacle was very taxing. There are a lot of stressors. I remember in my first week I felt very stressed
Just a lot
physically.
of new skills.
Yeah,
also.
yeah, a lot of new skills too.
I think for me, everything was in its extreme form. So the good and the bad were all in their extremes.
Yeah.
So the exhaustion, the hunger for me, but then also the sense of achievement, the sense of like kind of a group dynamic. So everything was just in its extreme.
Everything
in the
was
Sierra.
heightened. Literally heightened.
12,000 feet. Yeah.
High altitude feelings.
I really loved the alpine starts and waking up super early at like 2 or 3 a.m. starting because because you get to see the Milky Way and the night sky, and you're walking underneath that, and
One
you see
morning,
the,
yes.
you see the
Force the
Dipper
morning.
and the North Star, and you're like, oh, I'm walking north, and you're like, I can see that I'm walking north, except for the one time that we walked south.
That was only briefly.
No, it's not true.
So, do you want to explain why we were getting up so early? Why were we frequently in the dark at the start of all the videos?
Well, the snow, while compacted and freeze-thawed multiple times before we were entering the Sierras, is it's not like a glacier. It degrades rapidly with the morning as soon as the sun hits it. I'd say usually by 10 a.m. the snow quality has already turned to slush. Yes, it depends on the morning. It depends on the temperature overnight. However, if it's frozen overnight, it's usually bad by 10 a.m. If it's not frozen overnight, it's usually already bad by like 6 or 7.
And bad is like slushy enough where I think over time when you're walking in that slush, it sucks your energy because you walk a step and you sort of slide. You walk a step and you slide. You walk a step. It's like walking in sand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Worse.
But worse.
But
cold.
Yeah.
Cold, wet sand.
And then as we went through the Sierra, the sun also formed sun cups in the snow, so they became quite deep and big ridges. So then if you were walking in that in slush, you would just be sliding into the sun cups. Yeah.
I think before 10 a.m. we were probably 2 to 3 times faster or more efficient on the snow than we were after 10 a.m. So,
Yeah, I
it made
think
a
it's
huge difference.
important for people back home because I had the wrong idea of the Sierras and the snow, and it's not winter, it's spring, it's melting, so it's hot in the days and you get winter climate only in the nights and only for a couple of hours when you walk during the night. So that will come in later as well with gear and everything because it depends on how you view it and what you come into the mountains with the type of experience you have.
I think the second reason it's really important to come early to the campsite for dry all your stuff because we have so much sunny day. And the second reason I sleep really well at maybe 5 p.m. because it's the ground still warm, and maybe after 2 or 3 a.m. It's really cold on the night, and you can wake up so many times.
It's
Yeah.
true.
And you
Waking
need to
up
dig
in
your
the
tent
night.
stakes in and do all that when the snow is still soft and slushy in the afternoon. The other thing I think also is as we started to walk through more of the Sierra and it was back under tree line, we were tripping over trees, and those trees and especially rocks underneath the snow, it starts to melt the snow around it and it creates these big gaps in the snow underneath. So if you're walking in it when the snow is not as firm, you're more likely to post hole right through and injure yourself, as we've all done.
Yeah.
Some of us
Especially-
more critically than others.
And also, if you're trying to cross rivers with snow bridges on them, you want to be on the snow bridges when it's still frozen and secure. I just don't think you can trust snow bridges after 11 a.m., 12 p.m.
And avalanche risk is higher, but it was more in the beginning of our Sierra journey, but it was significantly higher after noon. So that's also a reason why you want to start early in some of the melting season.
The water level can also change significantly over the course of even a day, 2 days. We noticed in the later, like in our Mammoth to Sonora stretch, that we could see the water level on the trees was at least like 1.5 feet higher. So like what, 45 centimeters higher on the trees the day before in the afternoon.
That leads me to my next question, before I was rudely interrupted by Loto. Was there anything that surprised you or was different from your expectations when we were at Kennedy Meadows South before we entered the Sierra?
Snowshoes?
Snowshoe.
Snowshoes are great.
No!
I thought it was gonna be like you get up there and it's just all snow continuously, and we were never gonna find any dirt. We were gonna have to pack out all our.
That's exactly what it was, continuous snow.
Well, but I mean, like we did find dirt patches. I thought I was gonna have to pack out all of my poop, so I had all those rag bags.
That's true.
Yeah, and we ended up discovering some dirt patches, but it was definitely a lot of
Tree
snow.
wells.
I think for me, like the terrain overall was what I expected, but what really surprised me was more like the micro terrain.
Yeah.
So like when we were in the thick forests, the tree wells could be 8 feet high, and you have this really wavy terrain. So you're doing all these micro ups and micro downs, and it
You can't even tell if you're
takes-
actually climbing or descending.
it takes a lot more energy out of you than at least for me than I thought it would.
Yeah.
So I think the micro terrain was a huge surprise. I was expecting sun cups, but I think walking on them is still different, even if you are expecting them to be there.
Yeah.
But yeah, for me it was the thick forests were just so much tougher than I expected them to be.
For me, it was just like endurance and exhaustion, long days, going less than 1 mile per hour,
Yeah.
hiking for 12 hours per day at least.
Yeah, I think in the desert it was so easy for me to just know my pace is this much, and so I know, okay, 1 mile, 20 something minutes, I'll be there. And then in the Sierra, I think I was fighting for every 1/10 of a mile. I was like, oh, we're that much closer. Oh.
Yeah.
I think for me it was the same thing that was mentioned. I didn't realise how fatigued and how many breaks I would need throughout the day. When I was hiking in the desert, I'd start off in the morning, just breeze through maybe a cliff bar or two as I was walking. I never really stopped, and when I was in the Sierra with these guys, I'm like begging for a lunch break, and it's constant stops of I need to take a layer off, I need to do this, I need more water, I need this, I need that, and it was frequent stops, and that just seemed to be that the day was dragging on a lot more, and the target mileage was less, but the hours that it took to get there was just so much more, and it was so physically draining. I never felt like there was a single night that I got a complete full night's rest, because you're burning the candle at both ends. You're getting to camp late, and then you're starting off at 2-3 in the morning, maybe waking up at 1 so that you can have some breakfast. And I just felt that every day it was compounding how tired, how fatigued I was, which meant I needed more breaks, which meant that we got to camp later, and I don't know if that was the same for everyone, but I felt like I was definitely demanding a lot more rest time, and towards the end of the Sierras I was falling asleep every lunchtime. Just we'd get to lunch, I'd throw something down my gullet and then fall asleep for 20 minutes because I was just exhausted all of the time. My muscles hurt all of the time.
I think it's also very mentally draining too, because you're doing a lot more navigating. You can't just kind of mindlessly follow a dirt path. You have to navigate around the microterrain, as you said, and you have to navigate in the snow where you don't see any trail. There's no trail. Maybe you find some boot track here or some crampon marks here and you're trying to follow it. But you're kind of generally taking a bearing and then moving towards that bearing. But you're navigating around trees and other obstacles. Maybe here's a cliff or whatever it is. So
I think that's a really, really good point. How not just physically exhausting, but mentally taxing it was all the time.
And I think it's also a different kind of mentally taxing in the morning versus in the afternoon. I think in the morning you're kind of focused on not falling into the sun cups and slipping on the ice. And in the afternoon you're more focused on not post-holing or not like sliding around in the slush and falling over.
And also I found that it was kind of mentally taxing in the way that the length of time we were out there, 5 weeks is a really long time to be doing the exact same thing every single day, that routine.
Yeah.
It gets trying, or at least for me. I just found towards the end I was starting to get pretty aggravated pretty quickly with a lot of things that we found were normal every day. Sun cups, you can definitely tell in some of the vlogs I was really getting irritated by the depth and the extent of the sun cups, the hill climbs and up and down and tree wells and traverses. It all got very mentally taxing for me.
Yeah, and you can't look up. I feel like in the Sierra you want to be like, oh wow, it's so beautiful, I want to look at it, but as soon as you lose focus on your feet, you fall immediately.
Yeah.
For me, it's two things. First expectation was coming from winter and teaching winter back home. I had the wrong mental picture of what the snow conditions here was. As I started with the last question, this is spring, it's not real winter. So I came in with it almost with the wrong gear, because I was shifting towards more it being frozen all the day. And that meant that I had some perspectives that needed to be changed. So that was a big thing. And then secondly, I think for me, it's the fatigue from not having enough food. At least me and maybe some others here in the group, we calculated that you needed around 8,000 calories per day, and I carried around 4,100. So just imagine what 5 weeks of that does. I've gone down from size 32 to 29 in the waist in my pants, just as an example. And that was really taxing, both mentally and physically, because it was almost like the tank was gone at lunch sometimes. It was just, I had nothing more to give.
Afternoon crash.
Yeah.
I really felt that.
Yeah.
I was gonna say I almost had to probably get close to doubling the food intake that I had. I had a few significant crashes, calorie wise, and I just, I always expected that it was going to be more energy output, but it just did not, in my mind, it did not equal like doubling my food. So that was a huge surprise to me, just how much I needed.
I was going to ask this question later, but I'll bring it now, was the problems with hunger, and the idea of how much food can you physically carry before it becomes a detriment that you carry. I found, similar to you, now that the waistband that once fit me quite healthily, I can't close, and now all of the weight of my pack is on my shoulders because the waist belt is loose. It won't do anything, and it won't fasten any tighter than it currently is because I'm losing so much weight. So I'm now carrying all of the weight of my pack on my shoulders, plus the bear can, plus the winter gear, plus the ice axe and the crampons and the microspikes, and so I'm now got to this point of diminishing returns where if I add more food so that I've got more calories to give me the energy to carry the pack is now so heavy that it's just, you get it.
Well, I think one thing I want to make sure we say is that in a high snow year, the big difference is that you just have fewer resupply options. You just can't really get out as much. Places are closed. A lot of roads are closed. Access roads are snowed over. And so that's the reason why we had to do these big food carries, is because we couldn't just stop every couple of days. We had to go for a 9-day stretch. We had to go for an 8.5-day stretch. We had to go for a 7-day stretch. And knowing that you only have this much food for this many days, I think everybody was rationing their food in the first couple of days, just knowing like, okay, I can only have one dinner today. I can only have this much peanut butter each day. Yeah.
Pisa?
Yeah, I want to point out a mistake I made on the first stretch, and that was when I added my snow gear to my Hyperlite 3400, which is I think a 55-liter pack, internal plus external. So I had the bear can, I had my crampons, spikes, ice axe, and a sleeping bag liner. All these things, plus what we were planning for the first stretch to Kearsarge, which was 7.5 days, it would not, carry well in a pack of that size. And I was like, I really don't want to buy another pack, so I'll just cut my calories. And that was the biggest mistake of this year for me. And I think it's the reason that I bonked so hard on the Whitney day.
Yeah.
And so I went from doing a 1,200 calorie dinner every night to an 800 calorie dinner. I went from doing 4 oatmeal packets a day to 2 oatmeal packets a day. Yeah. I went and I didn't increase any of my pocket snacks. My lunch stayed the same, but later in this year, I increased my pocket snacks. I increased my lunch. I went from doing 3 pocket snacks every day to around 6, and I think I increased my calories. And just carry it. It's so worth the wait. Like I went from eating around 4,200 to 5,400, and it was the last 2 stretches that I was carrying enough food for myself that I actually felt strong. I actually felt rested. I was getting better sleep. I was, going faster and feeling better about it.
Yeah.
And so the food is absolutely worth the wait, and I would actually recommend increasing your food for the Sierra and not cutting the calories like I did.
Yeah.
It's a big thing. I'll be thinking about that. If you have the money, go for a double system, so to speak. One mountaineering / mountain spring winter system, and one ultralight system, because it kind of shifts. Going into the mountains, the more traditional methods I reflected on work better. If you carry heavier, you need to take more breaks. You walk a bit differently. But you need to have a backpack that can carry that weight comfortably. And same with sleeping systems. If you have the money, I prefer a mummy bag during winter, but I love the quilt during summer. But it's just so much more easy with a mummy bag, even though it's a bit more weight during the winter, and things like that. I think you understand what I mean. But that's the general thing, that it's a different ball game. It's a different match. It's a different setup. Yeah.
I also tried to be very weight efficient and volume efficient with my food because of the bear can and because of how much we had to carry. So I ate a lot of mashed potatoes, as everyone in this group knows. And I just think that you have to. By the end, I started carrying Nutella, peanut butter, things that maybe were not something that I wanted to fit in the bear can, but that I was like, this is just for my mental health.
Yeah, definitely. And was there anything that actually was the way you expected it? You said, Jackpot, that you pretty much expected the terrain and sun cuts and things like that. Was for anyone else? Was there anything that you?
I think the bigger picture of the terrain, the steep passes and river crossings, etc. I think I had a clear picture. Mostly, I guess, from previous snow years and just seeing the trail.
Yeah.
And that was cool.
I think being part of a team, I knew that was going to be very important for getting through this year, and I think that was huge for our team, just being able to lean on each other in the Sierra. And I think I knew even in the Sierra, as we were suffering through every day, that I was also going to miss it, because I was like, I really like hiking as a team, even though sometimes you have to compromise and it's hard. But the teamwork and the cooperation was really cool, especially during when we had to do all the river crossings and working together, scouting for where to cross the river and crossing together. That was a really cool moment for me that I don't think I'll get to have later on the trail.
I would also like to point out that the success rate for the people that attempted the Sierra this year was very low.
Yeah.
A lot of people went in. A lot of people broke off and left at Lone Pine, left at Kearsarge, and never came back. The success rate of our group, if it was 100%. I mean,
Yeah.
like Rooster always knew he wasn't going to complete
Yeah.
the Sierra because he had a trip planned to the Pyrenees. I think that's because we had a good plan and we had good communication, and there were times that I think if we were alone or with other people, then we would not have completed it. I know that I wouldn't have if it weren't for a strong, communicative, driven group.
We also took it very serious. I feel like many groups went in like, oh, we're gonna try this in a small,
and see if
like,
it works.
we actually made plans for every stretch and like talked to each other about our plans, and
There were a lot of meetings in the beginning where we were discussed in detail, and I think those were essential so that everyone was on the same page. We knew what was expected of us and what to expect of the terrain.
I think also like coordinating risk tolerance, because that's huge in the Sierra. Like you know, you can do it, but there are different ways to do it. So what do we all agree on the way that we're going to do this?
I think, and this is credit to Stitches, I think one of the best things we did before going in was to actually have a talk about our risk tolerance, what we were most afraid of, what our bad sides were, when we get tired, when we get snappy, how do we work, what is typically our bad side, and all of that. And I do think all of the things that, at least for me personally, I said in the beginning, confronted with that question, it did happen, and it will happen to all of you if you go in there. Because that's group dynamics. And I also think the second big thing is that all of us started hunting for a team for the Sierra from the beginning of trail, basically. And it's so interesting to us sitting in Canada Meadows South, like we've been hunting for a team for a month, and all the rest was basically coming to Canada Meadows saying, oh, who want to go up to the mountains? And I think that's what made the culture we have in our group, that everybody is really goal-oriented and had the vision of going into the Sierra from the beginning. And that's a big thing, I think, why we are sitting here as a whole group compared to a lot of split groups out there that just happenstance got together and didn't talk through things.
Well, I think so.
At the same level,
two
at
things.
least.
One thing is that you're in the Sierra for so long. You're in there for 9 days at a time, potentially, with just us. Like, we never saw anybody else besides each other. It's a lot sometimes. Every day you start together. Every day you have lunch together. Every day you go to camp together. And that is a huge, like, do you even get along? And then secondly, I think most importantly for me, which I have been thinking about since before I started the trail, is, okay, I need to go in with a group of people that I trust, that are not going to abandon me, that are not going to, like, break off or make other decisions separately, or, you know, whatever. Like, we're gonna work together as a team. And I think that I had met almost all of you, except for you, which we met you in the Sierra, but that we
in the middle of the Sierra.
but I knew even before entering the Sierra that I knew I could trust every single person in this group. And then we hiked alongside you and your hiking partner for a stretch of it, and I felt the same about you too. So I think that helped me feel comfortable with being part of this group.
Yeah, for me it was a tour experience on the Sierra, because I just start with one partner and I can do all the Sierra alone. I know this because every time you can be exhausted and you need to take a wise decision for river crossing, for climb, for know where do you want to camp tonight before to climb the next day. I speak for the first pass on the Sierra, and it was really challenging. And I think my experience of the PCT, that would be not the same if I do this alone, and I prefer really do this in team for take really safety decision. And I think it's more for the safe feeling every day. It's important to be on the team. Yeah, really.
Yeah, I want to add, one more thing. I want to add one more thing, which is that I've been thinking a lot about these two quotes for getting through the Sierra. One is, I think it's an African proverb, which is, if you want to go fast, go alone, and if you want to go far, go together. And I think that's 100% true for our group. I think that just being able to make decisions together, we could go farther. We made it all the way through, all of us, because we had stuck together. The other one I was thinking about was, if you can't have fun with a problem, you can't solve it, which comes from my work and my normal life. And for me, it was true in this year, because we as a team, I think, overall laughed a lot. We had a lot of fun, even though we were suffering. And every time anybody fell, it was always mostly laughing. And I think because of that, we could keep up a good team morale.
Peter brought it up, sorry. He said that the success rate so far this year has been very, very low and worth it. And had an estimation, a sort of conservative estimation of how many people you believe made it through. What was that?
I want to reframe the success rate, though. I think that maybe we call it completion rate, because
Completion
I don't
rate
think
is much
that
better.
failing to do the Sierra is a failure necessarily. It was
No.
just a different choice, different priorities.
No, you're right. It is a completion rate is a much better way of phrasing it.
The completion rate when we came to Sonora was around 38 people. And if you count how many that could have gone in our period, it's around 1,600 people. And if you do that math, it's not the correct math, but it's around 2.5%. And that's quite low, you know. Just a couple of percent is not that much. And it's getting better, though. I think around now it's around 50, 55. But then again, as the people finishes, more people could have gone in, so you have to recalculate. But it's low. So yeah.
It was Chipmunk who had that trail magic a few days ago for us, who said that there were particular days of the year that he would usually see about 50 to 70 people, it's sort of at the peak of people coming through the Sierras.
During one day?
In one day.
Oh, wow.
And meanwhile, he said that he'd seen 15 people in 4 days. And that was including 9 of us that came out in one morning. So it's really low at the moment, and I totally understand why people have decided to take other paths, because if you're out here for enjoyment, 5 weeks of trekking through 15 feet of snow is not an enjoyable way to spend your summer. So I totally understand, and hike your own hike, and if that's what you've decided, then all love to you. Going on from that, I wanted to get everyone's positive thing, everyone's best experience. What was the best thing from the Sierras to take away from it? Ooh, hard one. I've asked for something positive, and the room's gone silent.
Worth it's going to be the first one to
Yeah,
talk about
believe it or not.
positive things.
Mather Pass. It was my favorite pass and the funniest day for me during the whole Sierra. My asthma was good that day. The puffing worked, and I was together with Roosta in the front, just sending it, going all the way up fast as hell, climbing like a spider, having fun. Because I love things like that. It's the rush, and I do think I have a high tolerance for sketchy stuff. So coming up on Mather and looking out, it was one of the big, A minus.
A minus.
Yeah.
Wow, that is really high grade. For the man who rated beautiful sunrises as a D plus.
Yeah, that was just the experience. But yeah, Mather, amazing. That was my favorite, and the accomplishment of making that. We didn't take the most efficient route, but we took the cool route.
I think one of the best things for me has been just being with the team. I remember there was this one moment where we were near Ray Lakes, I think, and I was a bit behind, and you guys had all gotten onto this rock in the middle of the lake, and I could hear across the lake that you all were laughing on this little rock, and I was like, that's my team! Back to my team!
And then you got to a water
I
crossing.
know, I was like, oh no! Yeah, and I had that moment again on one of our last days where I think I was, again, for some reason, not near you guys. I'd taken a slightly less sloped path down to the valley, and you guys were all on this more steep slope, and you all were slipping and laughing at each other, and I was like, this is so nice, I'm gonna miss this. Yeah.
Jackpot.
I'm trying to remember where it was, but it was it was after we that meadow that we got to when we were all really slap happy. Where was that?
Oh yeah,
That was,
at
the
Dorothy
start.
Lake Pass.
Just before Dorothy.
Yeah.
Lake?
After Dorothy Lake Pass.
Yeah,
After Dorothy.
just
So
after.
after exiting Yosemite, then, right?
Great day.
Yes.
Yeah. So after we exited Yosemite, I think we were all in this weird like
We started
hysteria.
seeing more dirt. It was
Yeah,
so
the
exciting.
the landscape changed a little bit, and it finally felt like something was changing from the High Sierra to the next section that we were entering into, and everybody just got into this really crazy fun mood, and it was like it almost felt like a whole fever dream was happening, and everyone was just really excited, and yeah, for me, a lot of the joy of the PCT has been watching the scenery and the landscapes change as we progress north. And I think we had been, the High Sierra was beautiful, but we had been in there for so long that I was just so excited and relieved to see something
sign that we
change,
moved on,
have
yeah.
a sign that we were moving on and making progress. And the mood of the group really reflected it, and I think that it was just a really fun day.
So Jackpot's good point about the Sierras was leaving the Sierra.
Still the Sierra, just leaving the High Sierra.
Pisa?
Yeah, I think my highlight was probably Forester Pass. It felt like maybe a bit cliche, but it was like kind of like the true like first big test of the PCT in the Sierra. I remember reading comments about people that had gone in, like 2 weeks before us. Some of the first people to do Forester Pass, and they were talking it up like you needed 2 ice axes and ice screws and mountaineering experience, and I had none of the 3. And when I got there, it was just a traverse approach with a good boot track, and then you get to some snow-free switchbacks, and then you cross a 50-foot ice chute and some of the deepest boot track that I've ever seen, and maybe even a bit too deep. So it was a breeze, but then I think the highlight for me came from watching the sun rise over that crest just to the right of Forester Pass, and it really is dramatic how much the landscape changes past Forester. You start to get these incredibly dramatic granite ridges, stuff that I had never seen before in my life, and I was just blown away by the landscape, as well as happy that I achieved, just the first, big test. So that was definitely the highlight for me.
Bushwack. Was that the day before Forester, your
Yes.
highlight?
Exactly. Yeah, that's actually true. Because the day before we did Forester, we had our first we split into 2 teams. Some of us went up Whitney, and some of us took a short day to up to Forester Pass to the approach. And we were at camp pretty early, so we had time to make a snowman. We had time to chill.
Greg Forrester.
Yeah, Greg Forrester. And it was also the coolest campsite I've ever had, and probably will have. And
The coldest.
The coldest, but also the most starry. Many stars in the night, and took some night photos, star photos. It was amazing. And also the day after Forster was. I think I was a bit scared of doing it, but it was so easy, so it gave me a lot of hope for the rest of Sierra. So that was nice.
Loto?
For me, maybe everyone speak about the pass. I will speak about the Pincho Pass. Was a long climb before to do the pass, and for me was a hard day mentally. I was not here, so just for myself, I'm feeling really exhausted about the physically challenge and the Sierra challenge, the snow, and we climbed for maybe 6 miles, and my crampon broken before to climb the end of the pass. So this is what I want to remember of the Sierra. All the difficult part, you will transform this in good experience on your head. And this is my best memories for me and my second was always see the force of the group people. So yeah, I'm really happy to join this group at the mid of the Sierra, and they had me and they accept me like I am on the Sierra, and it's hard to have people on your team after 2 weeks on the Sierra. I can say, yeah.
I don't think we would have accepted
So
anyone
thank
else.
you.
But I don't think we would have accepted anyone else but you. It was the fact that we knew you. I knew you since San Diego, and we could tell that you were a very competent hiker. And if it had just been somebody else who was just sort of random come up to us and say, "Hey, can I join your group?" It wouldn't have worked. I think you slotted in very, very well and took Rooster's place. You just need to learn how to pronounce contour aggressively, and you will be there.
We previously had a member of our group, Rooster, who's from Australia, Roosta, who would do a lot of our navigation, and often he would say, like, this thing goes up like this, but let's just contour aggressively around it and just go straight up, and then we're going to be bang on it.
Bang on track.
Bang on.
I reckon we're bang on it. I'd say for me, the experience of being in a big group like this, I've not hiked in a group like this before, and it was a real pleasure to be around the different personalities, having the laughing and joking, and having the moral support, and also being able to take my foot off the gas as far as planning and navigation and everything like that. For a lot of the Sierras, I did just hang at the back and let everybody else navigate, and when I did take over navigation, we often ended up in the wrong direction anyway, so these guys weren't too keen to have me at the front anyway. No, in all seriousness, I really enjoyed the group dynamics. It's been a real pleasure to be around these people, and I feel like I've made a new group of best friends. It's really...
Oh, we had a feast every time we re-entered the Sierra. That
That's
was
true.
super nice.
Ooh, yes.
Yeah.
Do that. That's
Yeah.
good.
The Nero feast.
The Nero feast.
When you know that you don't have to carry the food, take heavy food out and have a really...
And Prosecco, right?
Yeah, Pisa,
So-
what did you pack out?
If you
So-
know that there are going to be trash cans at the top of the trailhead,
Yeah.
then yeah, you can take all that stuff out and get rid of your trash at the top of the trailhead and have a nice banquet.
So when we came out Kearsarge, the road was closed for 5 miles, and it was a hard pass, Kearsarge, and so we knew that when we re-entered, we would hit slushy snow if we tried to do the road walk and then the pass. So what we decided is that we would just do the 5 mile road walk, camp at the top, wake up very early, and do the pass in good snow. And so since we were only doing 5 miles, and since there were trash cans at the top of the trailhead, I thought it'd be a fun idea to mix things up and pack out some luxury foods like Prosecco, a loaf of sourdough, a fig spread, Gouda, brie,
A whole pie.
a whole,
Whole
yeah, the apple pie as well. And so I had 8 pounds of just luxury food strapped to the back of my backpack, and I was just like struggling up this 5 mile road walk, which should have been easy, but when we got to the top, it was really fun. And so it's nice to mix things up and, you know, not just eat mashed potatoes and
Yeah.
ramen and
Couscous. With
Couscous.
olive oil.
It's pretty good, honestly.
I will second the couscous with olive oil and some seasoning. That's really good.
it is good.
If I could add one
Go
more.
on.
I think when you were talking about like the highs are really high and lows are really low, I think one example is when a few of us did Whitney, and the 3 of us plus Rooster, and Rooster and I got on this ice chute for no reason. There actually was trail, but we thought that the boot track went up the ice chute, so we went up the ice chute, and we were really holding on with our ice axes and crampons, and I literally thought, I'm like holding onto this ice axe with no leash, with my gloved hand, I'm gonna slip off and fall off this mountain. And we went ice chute after rock scramble after ice chute after rock scramble until we finally got back to the trail. And I remember when I got to the trail, I was like, I'm alive! I'm alive! I was so thrilled, so glad.
I hadn't seen her in like probably 40 minutes because they went up this ice chute and they called back down to me. I don't recommend going up here. And so I was like, okay, they'll just like probably just cut the switch back and meet me at the top.
Yeah.
I waited for a while and they were actually behind me. And when she came up to me and said, I'm alive! I was like, what happened?
Yeah.
What happened?
By the
then
way,
seeing
people,
the views, I was like, this is beautiful. I'm so happy to be alive right now. What a privilege it is to be alive.
Appreciate life.
so by the way, that episode is actually tomorrow's episode, so you can watch that. Yeah, just tune in tomorrow. You'll see their jubilation firsthand.
Yeah, it was beautiful though. It was so worth it. I'm glad.
On that, what's the worst experience? Is it a helicopter flight?
Okay, so on the day that we did, I think did we do Glen Pass?
We did Glen. It was after Glen.
It was after Glen. Okay,
Before
so
Pinchot.
on the day that we were approaching Pinchot Pass, I think we got onto this dirt section, so I was like, oh yeah, you guys go ahead. I remember you were like, oh, do you want me to wait with you? I was like, no, go ahead. I'll be fine. It's just dirt. But it ended up being a lot of like water. There was water everywhere on the trail. So there were many parts of the trail that were just streams and creeks.
The trail has become a river.
Yeah,
It's a
in many
frequent
parts.
phrase.
The Pacific Creek Trail.
Pacific Creek Trail, yeah.
So I was trying to cross a river, a creek that was on the trail that was a bit too wide for my little legs. And so I was really struggling to like lever myself over this creek. And then when I got to the other side, I wasn't really thinking because I was like, oh, I made it. I just need to get, over to the snow. Stepped in the snow right next to a rock that was very sharp with my right foot and landed with my pack weight and my body weight fully on this sharp rock edge that split a little dime-sized hole open in my knee. And I was furiously texting Jackpot like, Jackpot, come back! I've opened up a hole in my knee! But luckily Bushwack had noticed that I was gone for a long time, so within 8 minutes he found me and then got everybody over to stitch me back up again with steri strips again. And then I called SOS on my Garmin and a helicopter came and evacuated me out. But I don't think that was my worst day, honestly. I think that day really was not as bad. I mean, it was beautiful out there. I got a great helicopter ride. I was very sad to be leaving. I think when you found me, I was sobbing. And I remember later that Rooster was asking for my pain level because at the time of injury because the medics wanted to know how bad is it. And I was like, oh, I think it's probably like a 4 out of 10. And you were like, are you sure? Because you didn't look like it was a 4 out of 10. And I said that it wasn't necessarily that the pain was that bad. It was just me knowing, because I had already gotten stitches once before at mile 150, that this might be, like, it would be much more difficult for me to exit the Sierra myself. And I would have to get evacuated and I'd have to miss something. I didn't know how long I'd have to take off trail in order to recover. So that was really the why I was sobbing so much. But I think it was made better because we were all together and everybody stepped in to help. And the helicopter ride was really beautiful. And then it allowed me to also go back and drive up everything that we had already hiked and marvel at how far we'd come. And then do a little bit of trail magic and pick up everybody at Bishop Pass the next day.
Yeah, I think for me, it was, I don't remember exactly what day it was, but it was somewhere between Mammoth and Sonora when I hit I was in major calorie deficit and I just bonked harder than I ever had in my life. And I really never felt anything like that.
It's Wilson Creek.
Wilson Creek?
When we camped at Wilson Creek.
Yeah. And I think for me, like yes, it felt terrible to be out of energy, but it actually had a big mental component to it, and I really started to panic because I knew that we were days away from getting out of the Sierra, and we really had there's no way to exit but to just walk. And
unless you want to call SOS.
Unless I wanted to call SOS for being hungry. But I didn't see, at that moment, I did not see how I was going to get out of the mountains with the amount of food that I had. I just thought that there was no way. And I really, it became a really stressful, kind of panicky situation. And ultimately it turned into one of like the best kind of displays of group dynamics because people hung back with me. Pisa gave me a bar. He distracted me with conversation while we made it up to camp. And so it ended up turning around all for the better, but it was when I hit that low, I really had a bit of a panic mode set in, and that was definitely my worst moment.
remember when Stitches found out about how bad you were, and we were already at camp, and she just ran straight over and was like, I'm going to give him some mashed potatoes.
Yes, I got a big bag of mashed potatoes. I got a bar from Pisa. Worth It tried to give me a bar, but I also know, was extremely hungry, so I didn't accept it.
Mashed potatoes is all I can do. That's all I have.
That's all I have to give. Yeah.
Any other bad experiences from people?
The first day that we I think when we entered this year, we didn't really have a clear idea of how much mileage we could do. So we had one day where we did 20.7 miles. It was like the second day that we had entered.
It was probably my worst day.
Yeah, that was a hard day. And I think we were all just trying out our gear for the first time. We had tried our snowshoes for the first time. They were so heavy. We didn't know how to use them, so we were tripping over them.
So fun.
We were tripping over them, except Bushwack figured out how to use them. And that was a really hard. It just felt so long, and I remember thinking, like, if this is what this year is going to be like, I don't know if we can. It's hard.
Yeah.
For me, it's probably the first week I was sick, and I had been off trail, and a lot of factors, but I just felt weak, and I felt like a burden for the group, even though they say I wasn't.
You were not a burden.
Because they're nice. But that's the point. Is how I felt, and that's how I felt. And the biggest thing for me was missing Whitney. That's the thing. That's the lowest of lows, probably for me, except for some personal things. But making the decision, feeling that I had that sore throat, I was coughing, I was feeling fatigued, and saying no to going up Whitney with a FOMO around that was very hard. Yes, we had a lovely day, guys, making a snowman, and that made up for most of it. But it's still something that really, it was one of my big goals going into the whole PCT. So that was probably the hardest, shittiest thing from another perspective than being fatigued or something like that. But yeah.
Which way?
Yeah, I don't have a single moment.
Pie pads.
That sucked, but every low point was followed by a high point or some sort of feeling of accomplishment. Like you made it through. It's like it's gonna suck every day, but as long as you keep going, it's good.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I have a single bad moment.
There were lows, but nothing that sticks out as a really dramatically bad.
No, maybe like the fact that it comes in with like the lack of food and just being exhausted. At the end, I could feel like sort of like a personality change. I got more easily annoyed and
Irritable.
Sorry?
Irritable.
Yeah, irritable, and not being able to recognize yourself.
You became irritable.
You were irritable.
That was a bit scary, and also like I don't enjoy like being annoyed by people for no reason at all. So yeah.
Loto, anything that sticks out to you as a bad experience from the Sierras?
Yeah, my bad experience on the Sierra, maybe it's one morning when we leave the snow camp, and my hands start frozen.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I remember Worth It give me really good tips for be warm, but was so long for my hand coming back, and I have a coming back warm, and I have a pain maybe for 2 days in my finger. Yeah. So this is my bad memory. It can be really dangerous to be frozen. Yeah.
Yeah, though I remember the morning of Forester Pass, I had to squeeze my feet into frozen shoes, and they were really frozen. And I know that Stitches had to do the same thing at one point, and I could hear her screaming as she was squeezing her poor, bad, injured ankle into frozen boots.
I didn't even register what sounds I was making until everybody had stopped their conversation around me, and Pisa was like, so is it a boy or a girl?
those frozen toes and frozen fingers can really just make the whole morning a misery.
I think about half of us got some degree of frostbite at some point.
Yeah,
I mean,
somewhere.
At Matter.
I got it on Matter Pass. Yeah.
Pisa, anything sticks out in your mind?
I don't think there's a single moment that sticks out in my mind. I think I had expectations that it was going to be hard and I was going to be hurting. So when it did hurt, or when it was hard, I was kind of understanding of that. But I do remember feeling stressed the most, actually, and it's funny, just before entering the Sierra. And so I remember being very overwhelmed. My pad had just broken the day that I had planned to go into the Sierra. My crampons that I ordered did not fit. And I remember sitting in Kenny Meadow South being like, am I really cut out for this? Am I prepared? Am I even accepted by the group who I only know 2 of? Like, I felt like I had just kind of stumbled into this and I didn't feel prepared, and I felt the same way actually as I was driving out to the southern terminus of the PCT. It was kind of like not knowing was worse than anything that I saw in the Sierra, and I think not getting good information about the conditions in the Sierra was also overwhelming. The fear of the unknown, like nobody has completed it yet, like will it be passable, like, and I didn't have snow experience. I think that was the most stressful part of the Sierra. But when I actually listened to my friend Diva, a triple crowner who did it in a high snow year, and he was like, you're going to be fine, just go for it, you just need spikes and crampons and an ice axe and you're going to be fine. And when I took his advice, and somebody who has taken the first step and like done it, and like listening to him really just smoothed things over for me, and I felt like I was able to relax. And when I actually got up to see the Sierra, the passes weren't impossible, the rivers weren't terrible.
I want to add that Pisa did an amazing job throughout the whole Sierra of doing a lot of the navigation for our team, which is mentally very taxing, choosing where to go, where to step, following boot track, and also kicking a lot of steps for us.
Those steep traverses,
into steep traverses, and also just even into the micro terrain and the snowbanks, going down, descending steep traverses, often being the guinea pig.
You take all the danger.
Yeah.
Go try it, Pisa.
See if that log's okay.
He's 24, he'll be fine.
You're young and strong. It's alright.
Go and see if that snow bridge will hold your weight. You're the heaviest. If it holds you,
then we're all good. Yeah. There was.
I was just going to echo what you said.
Yeah.
It is mentally taxing, and there were the majority of days after Roosta left that Pisa was leading almost all day, and there were several days where he just took over the entire day.
Or Bushwack.
Bushwack,
And Bushwack as well.
Good job.
Bushwack did an amazing job, so the two of you. Bushwack seems to have an internal GPS. He's just like, sees 2 points on the map and goes, we are here. I've got to get there in 15 miles, so this way. And just goes in a complete straight line, and then about a couple of hours later just falls down off a rock and goes, we're on trail.
Bang on.
Bang on it.
Yeah, Bushwack is really good at finding the boot track. Like, if you lose it, he's like, oh no, it's right there. You just have to look farther, and then you find it. Yeah.
This actually leads me to my next
Wait,
question.
I want to add about the river crossing.
No.
I wanted to say I felt a lot of dread before we had to do a river crossing where we had to swim. There was only one. It was at Thompson Creek at Stubblefield and Thompson, and I think for me that was like the moment where everything that I had been worried about for this year, which was river crossings, really. I mean, the snow, it's hard, but you can get through it. Steep traverses, be safe, whatever. But river crossings, some of them, I felt like, okay, maybe there will be some that will just be impossible to get over because it's too dangerous, too high. And I'm not a particularly tall person. I'm only 5'4", so I was always worried about, like, is the water going to be too high for me to cross? And for the swimming crossing, I was like, oh my God, I'm already freezing in my clothing on the shore. You and I were both like trying to warm up in the sun. And knowing that I was going to have to strip everything and then put all of it into my pack and try to go across, I think worth it that day. Did a huge hero move, just going across first, teaching everybody how to do it. He even talked as he was doing it because it was like a demonstration for him. Just like, yeah, put your pack in the water, now I'm going across, and I'm here. I'm on the other shore. And I remember all of us cheering like, it's possible! It's possible! And then when I was in the water, I was dying. I could not breathe. Came out crying, and for everybody to like come out and pull me up and warm me up, it was, yeah, hard but good.
Put in the meme of Jackpot. The Jeep.
Jackpot was fine, although his face wasn't registering that he was fine. He was perfectly okay, but his face looked like
he
the
did
thunder.
one of the best ones. It was just his face at the end was it's amazing.
I get very angry at cold water. And there was a lot of cold water.
Old man shakes fist at water. For me, my worst experience, I don't know if it was my worst experience, but it was a very stressful moment, was I got separated from the group through my own fault. I saw everybody descending a very steep slope, and I had a problem with traction. My microspikes were so blunt that I would often slip down slopes that everybody else just walked down fine, and I saw this slope and I said, no, I'm going to go around the rocks. Worth it's already done it, I'll do it. So I said out loud, hey, I'm going around the rocks, I'll meet you at the bottom. But I think everybody was concentrating on their own traverse down the slope to be able to hear me. So I disappeared off, and about 15 minutes later I reached the bottom of this very steep slope and no one's around, and I just went, right, okay, I guess I'm going to cut the trail and try and catch them when they go on, hopefully knock off 15 minutes. So I cut the trail, I reached this creek, and I couldn't see them, couldn't hear them. I yelled out, but the creek was too loud for anybody to hear me, so I just saw a log and I crossed part of it, and then I saw a snow bridge crossing another part of it, and I went, great, I'll get to the other side dry, and I'll either wait for people or I'll be able to scout where they are or whatever. And as I put 2 feet on the snow bridge, it just crushed out from underneath me, and I went sort of not underwater but up to my neck in the water, and I was just instantly in shock, just freezing cold. Didn't expect that to happen at all. The snow bridge looked pretty solid, and the first thought I had when I actually could think of something was, oh no, everything, camera, phone, everything's gone underwater, everything's going to be broken. And then the next thought was, how do I reach the riverbank? I'm about 4 feet in fast flowing white water. How do I reach the riverbank? But fortunately I found a large rock I could step up onto and drag myself onto shore. And about 10 minutes later I was head to toe soaking wet, freezing cold, and I met Pisa, who'd come out to look for me to check I was safe, and unfortunately he bore the brunt of my stress and my anger in that situation, and I was mostly angry at myself, and I kind of took it out on Pisa unfairly. And then we got back to the group, and everyone was sort of hanging on the shore trying to get to a bridge that was the entrance to this bridge was underwater, and everyone was standing around kind of looking at it. And I just took off my shoes and stormed through this water that was up to my chest, and I got to the bridge, and I just kind of realized, like, why are you angry? Why are you stressed? You're safe. Everything you have electronically works. It's fine. You've tried to turn on your camera and it's perfectly fine. It took a dunk, but it's okay. Your phone's fine. You are fine. You're not injured. Your clothing is drying out in the sun as we speak. Why are you so stressed? And in that moment, I just kind of got upset with myself of like how I let myself get affected. And I think that little moment of realization, of calming down from the stress, I was disappointed in myself for feeling sort of mentally weak, I think, and letting not a very stressful situation get to me so much. So I think that was a particular low of how much the Sierras had kind of affected me and worn me down. Whereas normally, if that had just happened, I would have just gone, oh well.
You lose a lot of your resilience, your emotional resilience.
Yeah, that's a great way of summing up what I've taken 10 minutes to say in a couple of words.
I thought you were going to say a marathon day after Whitney when you hiked like 26 miles for camp.
Doing Mount Whitney and a total of 26 miles.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that wasn't really a low.
I was going to say, I think one thing that you learn, and back to your point about the Sierra and emotional resilience, I think when you're in the Sierra, you realize that being angry and being stressed, it doesn't do anything. Like, it doesn't help you in any way to move forward.
It just hinders you.
It hinders you, and I think that is super true also in your normal life too. We just don't have that kind of high stress environment where you're seeing that very actively, but really especially on a thru hike in general, like anything that's happening that's bad, you have to figure out how to solve it objectively without being stressed about it, and then move on. You have to keep moving.
Yeah, that's a great tip for the whole of the Sierras. Approaching each, not letting it all stack up, just approaching it, each creek crossing separately. Not going, oh my God, this is the 8th creek crossing today, my feet are already wet, I've already slipped in the water, whatever. Yeah. It's just like, okay, how do I get across this particular creek? No, not letting it all add up.
Yeah, I think like a lot of things, when you accept your situation, it becomes a lot easier. If you're trying to force your way through something and hating every minute of it, there's just no way that you're going to get through it. But if you can say, okay, this sucks, but I have to make it through, this is just what it is, and you get through it.
Earlier on we did talk about the food carries and how they affected us, but I just wanted to touch on that again. Particularly my experience was that when we were doing the 9-day or 8.5 day of food carry, I found that I did what Pisa did on the first stretch, which was I can't carry 9 days of my normal food, so I'm going to carry as much as I feel comfortable carrying, or as much as I can fit into my bear can and pack, and still be able to close it. So when we were getting to the last few days of that stretch, all I really wanted to talk about was food, and I was talking to everybody about, what do you think about this? What do you think about that pizza? Oh, I'm going to make tagliatelle when I get to town. You know, sort of just talking all about food all of the time. And there was a point where Stitches just said, I can't have this conversation right now, I'm too hungry. So I found that for me, going without, on those long food carries, going without the amount of food I needed, all I did was obsess over food. I know Stitches had some stories about when Pisa was ranking burgers and
Well, I think for me, I remember when we were in the stretch on the way to Mammoth, and we had made a plan in Mammoth to 00, and there was one moment where we had just descended from a steep, I think Silver Pass, and Worth It, you were like gathering everybody, okay, this is gonna be the plan for our food, okay? You're gonna make crepes, you're gonna make curry, we're gonna have ramen, we're gonna have like, things that you're talking about in schedule.
Because I had the opportunity to get everything I've been obsessing about.
We did most of that stuff. So.
I've been obsessing over these foods, so you cook this, you cook that. And the first thing we're going to do when we get to town is we're going to have sushi. And it happened.
Yeah.
I think others had it a bit worse than me, but I did have it quite bad with the food. And as I said, I think that Pisa put it well earlier. I think I made the wrong decision as well to not carry that much food, thinking about the weight too much. And it was a lot better this last stretch. It was a shorter stretch, but I had a lot of food and I was much happier as a human being. So I mean, you're already under, the point is this, you're already under a lot of strain out there. And I get hangry. So you're helping yourself by not getting angry, basically. That's it.
Yeah, and if it's not just your mood, it could be an actual energy crash, the way that Jackpot had on one day. the way that I had on one particular day, obviously because I was ill I didn't film it, but we got to camp particularly early. Worth It and myself were there about 10:30, and we I just got onto a rock in the sun and fell asleep for about 4 or 5 hours because I was so physically drained and exhausted from pushing it to get to camp so early. And I don't think I was, well, I know I wasn't very well that whole day, and it was down to not having enough calories in that particular day's budget for food. And the next question is, we've talked about the positive things on trail. What about off trail, the days that we weren't actually there? Like, how did that affect going back in? Was it sort of a way that you got all of your energy back, or did you feel like it was just a rush to get everything resupplied, showered, laundry, and back on trail? What was everyone's experience of?
I think so. A group of 7, especially in a situation on trail where we're not really seeing other people, it's pretty much like we are each other's company. When that's limited to only high stress situations, that gets really taxing really quickly, and you start to get irritable, and you say, oh, I want to hike alone today, but you can't really, or whatever. So to me, having those zeros, having a double zero in Mammoth, for example, having time in Bishop, on a couple of different stops, to have each other's company in a low stress environment where we can actually relax. And to me, that's sort of where the group actually became a real group, a real team.
Really bonded.
Really
in a different
bonded.
way.
You kind of see the more human side of people, not the like, this is what they are like when they are suffering, because, it's different. And so for me, that was just, there were a lot of groups that splintered throughout the Sierra, and also a lot of groups that were not taking real zeros. They were trying to rush through it. And I don't know whether those two are related or not, but for me, I could see that if we tried to rush through those rest periods, those zeros, and we didn't take that time to bond in a lower stress environment, then I think we wouldn't have had the success that we did.
Well put. Yeah.
In Bishop, we had a day where our 2 Swedish friends wanted to do a surprise for us, and they made proper Swedish meatballs with the gravy and potatoes and not lingonberries. So very excited to find that.
There's no lingonberries here.
But just like that, I think made me feel like, wow, like this is like kind of a little family, and we're all cooking for each other and doing stuff together. And I think that is why in the end we were like, oh, we want to do something in Mammoth where you make crepes and you make curry, and we kind of all share together.
Yeah, I think it was very good. Like, we took our time. We took our zeros. We went out 2 times to Bishop. A lot of people pushed like 12, 13 days for the first stretch, which I don't understand. Although we had to do like the road walk and like add like 3 days of hiking, but still like having that break and just taking your time, I think it's important, just for the mental thing. And I mean, as long as you have the expectation that this is gonna take a lot of time, it's gonna take more than a month to get through this. But for me, that was never the problem, because I knew it would take time. And
in the end, it was 32 days for us.
I really
35.
With this.
Oh.
What I really enjoyed on that taking your time was that when we were exiting the towns, it wasn't like ever, right, tomorrow, get going, 6 a.m, we're going to do a 20-mile day. It was always, we're going to push to the trailhead, camp there, and then start early tomorrow, because we know that we can't get out of here very, very early. And we're not going to try and flog it for the first couple of, for the first day. So getting to the trailhead and having that banquet that we would have each time, and just really taking it easy, was an extension of the break that we took in town, and it didn't pile on the stress. So I think that was a really great thing, that we were all on the same page with that. No one needed convincing. It was I proposed as an idea, and I don't know whose idea it was. I think it was Stitch's, and it was, I think, a great idea to kind of ease ourselves into what was going to be a very high stress and physically demanding couple of days?
I think there's a big difference between being efficient and being effective, and I think that our group really focused on being effective. Being efficient would be like trying to do Bishop, Kennedy Meadows to Bishop in 12, 13 days. You're more efficient. You don't have to go out of Kearsarge Pass, exit to Onion Valley Road, get a hitch down to Independence and then to Bishop, and then go back in again and do, that definitely added time, but I think it was much more effective in that way.
I mean, we are all sitting here. That's a point we made earlier. That we were 100% completion.
Because no group is stronger than the. I don't like the word, but no group is stronger than the weakest link is a saying we have in Swedish, and I'm trying to translate it. So
No,
it
that's
sounds- it's the same.
It's the
Okay.
exact same.
And I think when you go into a group, you make a contract, and I think it was pretty clear for me with this group that we all made a contract. Not physically, but we were all of that mind, But we were all of that mind that we knew that we had to sacrifice and compromise on our own, maybe solutions or way of doing things to make it through. And I don't know this for sure, but looking at least at some of the groups around us that has split, it was quite obvious that they were more individuals walking together than a group. So my point is, in a high snow year for me, getting into a group, I think it's important to have that discussion. So you actually work as a group, not only, it's apparently for safety, we're going to walk together. That's not really enough to keep you together,
I would just add that this is our perception. This is not us at all judging any other group. This is just what we've heard and vaguely what we're seeing from the outside of groups.
Yes.
And it's not a hard and fast rule. I mean, for any rule that we've said, there is an exception. I mean, there are people that caught us who started this year at 10 days after us.
Yeah.
And they did to Bishop in one stretch.
Yeah.
And they said it was really hard and really taxing, but, it for you, whoever you are, it might work to get it done quicker. It might work to carry more food and do longer stretches and do longer days.
There were successful hikers that we've met that did go in solo and complete the Sierra solo.
Yeah.
So there are exceptions to the rule. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Moving on from that, there were quite a few sections that we had to navigate around. South Forks, there was the bridge out. There was another bridge out at Red Meadows. There's a traverse that was recommended don't do in snow. There were a multitude of areas that we had to go and make our own route. And I would say for almost all the Sierras, we chose our own route, trying to stick to trail most of the time, but because the trail was often the most dangerous route, we had to find our own way. What's everyone's opinion on not being able to stick to trail when you go through a high snow year in the Sierras?
Start here, because for me it's fascinating. I guess it's back home in Sweden, we always have one winter trail and one summer trail, because it's known, like, to follow a summer trail that's good in summer, in winter is almost always bad. Because the snow settles in different ways. So if you do, for example, Kungsleden in Sweden, you can see, like, when you're walking the summer trail, you can see 100 meters away the signs for the winter trail, and it's different signs. Yeah,
in a swamp.
In a swamp or something where you can't walk
That's cool.
in Sweden. So you have different signs for the winter trail and the summer trail, and that's like that for every trail. So look, it's the same here, and I understand normally it isn't like this, so you only have the summer trail here, but be aware that it's like that for the most of the time. So going into the Sierra being a purist can be really dangerous. Purist in a way, I mean, you have to follow the trail, because the trail normally goes up on traverses where it's really good to be in summer, but in winter it's a death trap. So you have to have the flexibility to actually evaluate and know that stuff, so you know that in this case following the trail is not good. But if I look at what I'm seeing with my eyes and not just staring at the GPS, I can see the natural flow of the snow. So that's the way I'm gonna take. And that's the way they probably would take if they would mark a snow path, actually a snow trail. So I think we knew that in this group, and I think the point is getting through, not following the trail religiously. So that's my point.
I think with the trail being flat on a mountainside like this, as the snow falls, it covers the flat part and then makes it a very steep slope. So it's not like you could follow the path. It's now become a steep slope, so it's easier to just go straight up than it is to go over and do all of these switchbacks. It's just adding unnecessary, very dangerous miles to your day when you're already physically exhausted, you're malnourished in a way because you're not eating enough. Sorry, Jackpot.
No, I was just gonna say, kind of to piggyback on what Outtake was saying. At least for me, I went into the Sierra on a high snow year knowing, kind of with more of like a mountaineer's mindset. So I knew that I had, in this stretch, I had point A and point B, and for us, it was all about looking at the topography and saying, okay, instead of staying on the side of this mountain where it traverses really steeply, maybe we go up over this saddle. Maybe we drop straight down into this ravine. The point is, for me at least, it was making a continuous footpath that got us, through within like a corridor of the PCT. So it almost amounts more to like what you might see on the CDT, where you're expected to stay within a certain kind of distance of, stay as close as you can to the actual trail. But for me, it was more about traversing the High Sierra, finding the smartest route from A to B, while sticking as close to the PCT as we possibly could, knowing that when you can never see the trail, it's just impossible to stay on the trail at all times.
Yes, it's about staying safe. It's not about sticking to an arbitrary line that was drawn in much different conditions.
There were also river crossings, I think, where it just made sense to cross at a certain point, as opposed to where it normally crosses on the trail. For example, the trail might cross at the lowest point in the valley, but that's going to be where the water is the highest, so maybe you want to go higher. And be where there's maybe a snow bridge because there's so much avalanche run out that it's got quite a thick layer of snow there, so the snow is still bridged over the water, and you can actually safely cross there, so long as the topography on the other side is good enough that you can actually make it back over to where the trail eventually crosses the river, stuff like that.
Yeah, sometimes going a mile up river and then back down again to join trail. That's maybe something also the people need to budget into their day, is that yes, 2 points are 10 miles apart, but there are sections where we're going to have to go 2 miles up river and then 2 miles back. Now it's a 14-mile day. Now we have to do that 3 times, and it's become a 16, 18, 20, 24-mile day. And then you have to adjust your expectations of how far your points A and B are apart because of, and then that comes down to what these guys were doing quite frequently, which was reading the contour lines, looking at the landscape and saying, okay, this is what we've got ahead of us and we need to go around this ravine or go up and over this saddle, as Jackpot was saying. Pisa was doing that a lot, just stopping, having a look at his phone and seeing the topography and reading the contour lines and saying, guys, the trail goes this way, but if we go up that way. Bushwack did that a huge amount as well, just looking at what was the most sensible and easiest and safest way to
looking at the
get around
aspect
things.
also of the slope and knowing if it's south facing or north facing, if it's likely to have snow. If it's likely to have snow and you're bushwhacking, it's much easier than if it's already melted and you're trying to bushwhack through actual brush. I think we at first did not budget enough time for the river crossings.
No.
Also, and we did them early in the morning, which was super cold, trying to warm up after doing them, and having all 7 of us take off our shoes, take off pants sometimes as well, and cross and then change back. Or river crossings where we needed to find an appropriate crossing, and so you're scouting up and down along the river and looking for logs and testing if this log works. Or there was another log where we tried to access the log, but we couldn't because there was a giant snowbank, and so Pisa had to literally cut a staircase essentially into the snowbank with his ice axe for us to be able to access the log. All that takes a lot of time.
Every major creek crossing took an hour.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
just
At
budget
least.
that into your time if you're heading in.
When we first entered the Sierras, I found personally that the snow covering everything, it was really beautiful. It was stunning, and then after a while you kind of get burnt out, and when you start to see dirt, that looks beautiful, the contrast of things. and there was a novelty. There was a novelty for the first couple of nights of like, oh yeah, I'm going to be sleeping on snow. I've never slept in a tent on snow, and then it's
Or a tarp and snow.
or tarped with a burst sleeping pad in snow, as Stitches once did. So the snow thing for me was, it was beautiful at the start, and then after a while it started to grate on me, and towards the end, I think it was on the very last day of the Sierras, I did say, why are we just constantly going on snow? Like, why? Because of weather. And I wanted to know how that affected you guys. I said how it like kind of drained on me after a couple of weeks of doing it, constant snow. How did it affect you guys? Were you fine? Was I the only one suffering in that regard?
No. I took a lot more pictures in the beginning, and then almost took no pictures in the end. Everything just looked the same. That's
I mean,
It's a white triangle.
At the beginning, it feels like you're walking on like a foreign planet, and you're sort of like, or you know, and it's just really like you
By
said,
the end,
really
you're like,
novel.
I'm gonna do the GMT in
But-
a low snow year.
Exactly. By the end,
That's
we're
exactly
all
what I
talking about
said.
how we want to see it in a low snow year. And,
Where are the Alpine Lakes?
and then for me, like for me, the real drain became camping on snow towards the end. It just made the nights a lot colder, and you didn't really have like places around camp to just sort of hang out. You had to find a rock or to perch on or something like that. So for me,
Everything you put on the snow
that,
starts to melt the snow.
yeah, for me, it became really taxing.
I think the exception is Yosemite, because for me in the beginning a lot of things looked like home. D
Seen this
minus.
before.
But jokes aside, I think when you don't get any kick from hormones or anything, and you get a reward, it gets taxing, you know. So Yosemite was like the high point for me, because everything is changed, you know. And then I understand how big the difference can be, you know, because it's so cool. It's something else, but it's all the tedious things, the monotony, where everything just becomes the same. It wears you down. That's it.
And I think he's referring to like when you get into Yosemite, like yes, you still have the big snowy peaks, but you get into these like this like smooth granite rock terrain, and it starts to look really different, and it
Very different.
gives you the feeling that you're not just in Antarctica anymore.
Exactly.
Or Sweden, I guess.
Yeah, very well put. Yeah.
Some of that snow was so thick, it was like, we are in Antarctica.
We're standing on top of 15 feet of snow.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And getting over those tree wells for me was, it's just that constant up and down waving.
Snowy forests.
Yeah,
It's the hardest to nav in too.
We saw,
Except
we
for the
would
one
see
for
like
anyone.
20 feet of trail, and we'd get on it of dirt trail, and we'd be like, oh my gosh, this is so nice. Well, it was nice while it lasted. And then when we got to mile 1068, which is where we had heard up trail that was going to be where the dirt started, or longer stretches of dirt would start, Worth It just broke out into song. He literally stopped.
Arms went up.
Like dirt, singing the word dirt over and over and over again.
Can I show that clip?
Yeah, you can show that clip. All the Swedes will know it's an Astrid Lindgren song from Ronja Rövardotter.
Oh, I thought you were making it up.
Celia hikes.
It's not with dirt, but it's the
like
same.
Oh, they don't sing about dirt.
No, they don't sing about
They
dirt.
don't have dirt in Sweden, they just have snow.
I went to Ben and Jerry's and bought dirt cake ice cream.
Oh, lovely. Yeah. I was really euphoric. It's interesting what happens up there.
Next question was everyone's shoe and sock combos, and like, you know, just sort of whether or not they worked. Starting off, I had waterproof socks with Injinji toe liners, and didn't work. My feet and socks were constantly wet, so I wouldn't go for that. Just didn't work for me. I could never get my socks dry. It was always too cold to get them dry. So I moved to Darn Toughs from the waterproof socks, and they also didn't dry. So having trail runners and socks and toe liners just didn't work for me. That's my experience. Pisa. Mouthful of bagel.
Yeah. I had some pretty light duty topo boots. I chose them because they had a thick sole, and my crampons were strapped on, and they didn't have a steel bar, and so they kind of relied on the stiffness of the sole to be able to kick in the steps and load the front spikes with weight. So I had the Trail Venture Tobos. They worked out okay. I wish they dried a little bit quicker, and give my Achilles a little bit of issues, but not too bad.
And then your crampons were?
My crampons were the Petzl Leopards with like the dynamic cord connecting them, and you just strap them on. What I didn't like about them was the time it took to put on and take them off. It really reduced the amount of times that I used them. Where it would have been nice to have them on, it's not worth the 5 minutes to put them on and the time to take them off. But that being said, they're a solid set of crampons. They got me up Whitney, they got me over Forester, they got me over Mather, and they worked out quite well. My socks, I wore Darn Toughs under my sealskins. Sealskins were very waterproof for 3 weeks and not so waterproof for the last 2 weeks. I clotheslined my Darn Toughs from the last day that are a little bit damp on the back of my pack, and then I turn my sealskins inside out and then sleep with them against my chest under my fleece against my base layer so that they dry out on the inside. I wring out my soles in the morning or in the afternoon after I'm done, and then if my boots are wet and it freezes that night, then I put my boots inside of my fleece 30 minutes before I put them on while I'm doing chores so that they thaw out, so I don't have to put on frozen boots. And that worked out very well.
Question for you, Pisa. You did get frostbite one time. Do you think you could have done anything, changed anything to like not get in that situation, or why did you get in that situation, and was it something that you did, or was it gear? Or would you change anything or not?
I wasn't carrying toe warmers. After I got frostbite, I packed out, I don't know, like 8 sets of toe warmers. And so right as I woke up, I'd activate the toe warmers, shake them, get some oxygen in them, and then throw them in my boots right before I put them on. And so that prevented further frostbite. I think I only would have really needed those for maybe 5 to 10 nights total in this year, on the coldest nights in the first 2 stretches.
And just in the morning, right, when it's actually winter weather, not during the day.
Yeah, and it's also, you want to optimize when you put your boots on at the very last moment, right before you start to hike. And if you're waiting around at all, and it's 20 degrees, 25 degrees Fahrenheit, then just standing with your feet on the cold snow is going to really sap your heat. It's going to be hard to get it back.
There were a few people wearing waterproof boots.
I think
I went through a couple of phases.
Yeah, because Jackpot has phases. I think it's good
Jackpot.
to do next.
So I did the first stretch from Kennedy Meadows to Kearsarge Pass with, I had waterproof, semi-aggressive mountaineering boots that had the heel locking mechanism, and I used the Petzl Irvis hybrid, I think is what they were called, crampons with those. So they had the heel lock and then kind of a universal toe mechanism. And for me, so you'll hear from Bushwack where these boots worked great, but for me the boots were absolute murder. I was miserable just about every step of that first week, and I don't know if it was because the boots were too stiff or too small or both, and I just wasn't used to it. So with that, I was wearing Injinji sock liners with Darn Toughs over top, and I just knew pretty much day 1 or day 2 that I had to switch. So when we got to Bishop after coming out Kearsarge Pass, I switched to the exact same boots that Pisa just talked about, so the Topo Trail Venture. I switched to just a single mid-weight Injinji toe sock, and then I also had seal skins that I could put over top in the higher elevations where it was especially on the especially cold nights. And I also switched, since I no longer had boots that had the heel locking mechanism, I switched to K10 crampons, which generally worked great for me. The only time I wish that I had the front spikes that the Petzls had was going across traversing Mather Pass, because we had this kind of steep ice traverse that had no boot track, and having front points would have been helpful. But basically I had 2 sets of the mid-weight toe socks. The pair that I wasn't using was on my pack while we were hiking. You know, the sun was pretty much powerful every single day, so I would have a dry pair waiting for me for the next day and just alternate the 2. And the sealskins, they wetted through pretty quickly, but I would say even when they were damp, if I slept with them in my sleeping bag with me, then they kept me pretty warm for the next day, even if they were a bit damp. So the switch worked out really well for me. I did generally have wet boots, or at least damp boots, just about every day, but having a dry inner Injinji pair of socks was kind of key for me, and I, kept reasonably warm feet most times.
I can go next. I kept essentially my same setup throughout the whole thing. We had some snow earlier in the desert section too, so I sort of tested out the trail runners and crampons kind of deal on Baden Powell, and I felt I didn't really like the way that the crampons stayed on the trail runners. They just didn't really stay as securely, and I was constantly adjusting them, and I had the Petzl Leopards as well, so just lacing them and getting the lacing to stay securely was really difficult. So I also added the same boots that that Bushwack and Jackpot had, which are La Sportiva mountaineering boots.
Trango.
Mine were Gore-Tex, not leather. And I really liked the way that those crampons stuck to those boots for the most part. I initially went in with those boots with my trail runners, which I was planning to use for river crossings, and also, since the boots don't really dry out so well, and also I had snowshoes. I think they were Atlas Range snowshoes, and I had 3 pairs of socks. So I had a neoprene pair, I had and then 2 regular Darn Tough pairs. One was just for sleeping. And that system worked well for me, except for the snowshoes. The snowshoes, I found that we were initially thinking we would need them for avoiding post-holing and walking on sun cups in the big valleys. But I felt that we did a lot more traversing. And on the traverses, the snowshoes really didn't do as well for me. I struggled to keep them. They're just so heavy. They were 4 pounds in total, so about 1 kilo each foot, and it just added a lot of weight, and I think it gave me the ankle issues that I ended up having, because we would just traverse a lot going this way on the slope, and my left foot was just doing a lot more work lifting every single time, the huge heavy snowshoes. And so I eventually got rid of them after the first stretch, and switched back to just having the crampons. I eventually added microspikes back as well. I initially thought that I wouldn't have a use for microspikes, thinking that we would only have crampons and ice and snow that was going to be really firm, but the microspikes actually worked better in most cases. We did have some dirt stretches and rock stretches, particularly on the higher points where maybe it was more wind blown. So walking with my crampons on that rock was really tough, and having to stop and take them off every time was really annoying. So switching to microspikes really helped. For the river crossings, I used the trail runners with my neoprene socks, which kept my feet warm in the water, which is really nice. But I would also rotate and dry out socks at lunch and on my pack every day to keep them warm. The boots, I would say, one thing that I was concerned about before was frozen boots, and I did have that, definitely. I also sleep in a tarp and bivvy setup, so I don't really have like an inner place to keep it all warm. So I actually slept with my boots inside of my quilt. I would just sleep like basically with it next to my stomach. Not super comfortable, but it worked, and it stayed warm and didn't freeze. the next day. And yeah, I think that system
Can I
works.
just add two things to
Yeah.
mine since they... So I think a lot of us have a system where we slept with our boots close to us. For me, I wrapped them in my rain jacket and just kept them right next to
Oh,
me
that's smart.
in my tent. Sorry, I guess I should have mentioned that. And I would take my insoles out as well, just to,
Oh, yeah.
to help kind of the drying process. And yeah. And then the other thing I wanted to say was that if you have, you know, more mountaineering style boots with the heel locking mechanism, and those boots, you know, you're used to them and they feel good to you. The crampons that I had were absolutely solid. I don't think I said that I actually liked the crampons. So the Petzl Urbis hybrids that I had were super solid. It's just for me, those boots did not work.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I did like the crampons that I had, the Petzl Leopards. On that ice shoot in Whitney, I could see that I was struggling a lot less than Rooster, who was using the K10s and really trying to kick steps in with very minimal spikes. I did like having the boots in my quilt sometimes because it gave me a place to put all my random things that I had to keep warm, like my electronics, my filter, all of my battery packs. That was a nice place to just drop them in the boots.
So I also had La Sportiva Trango mountaineering boots. I think the shoe selection is very personal, both in terms of like how warm is your feet, and the comfort. Like it's definitely noticeable going from a wide toe box to like mountaineering boots that are more like climbing shoes. They are really thin and stiff. For me, I made a choice already after doing San Jacinto and Baden Powell, which I did in trail runners and spikes, and I just didn't feel comfortable. I noticed I felt a lot more uncomfortable than the people I was hiking with, and just going to a much more secure way, like wearing crampons, wearing shoes, like mountaineering boots are really great for like kicking steps, especially downhill. And it made me feel safer, it made me enjoy the environment more, and it made me go faster as well. So that's also to consider, depending on your risk tolerance and how comfortable you are in the snow. The difference I did was I wore double socks. So I had actually 5 pairs, 1 pair of sleeping socks and 2 pair of... I don't know if it was overkill, but I felt like I was actually never cold. Like compared to you guys complained a lot more about COVID than I did at least.
Well, I think the boots I think definitely were warmer than the trail runners.
Yeah.
I only wore 1 pair of socks and it was mostly fine, except for the first part of the day.
Yeah.
Oh, are we gonna talk about gloves too?
We can talk about gloves.
Okay,
But maybe after
after this, yeah.
Yeah, I went the classical route, as most people here said. In the morning, they didn't feel their systems can warm them, like Stitches just said. I had trail runners on San Jacinto and tried all of that, and I almost got really severe frostbite. But it's important to know, through my work, I've had like 2nd degree frostbite maybe 5 times, so I have a really low tolerance and had permanent injuries. So for me, I knew that regardless, and it goes for you as well, if you for some reason are more sensitive, I would not recommend trail runners personally, because it is colder. But so I choose boots, but the bad side with the boots is they're heavy. And it's a lot of work to go walking them. I didn't take the mountaineering boots. I choose a more classical Swedish boots. I'm fast. Okay. So I took natural rubber and leather boots. These are 600 gram per boot, and I wouldn't take more than 600 gram per feet, regardless actually, because it's gonna be a lot of weight during all of those weeks hiking with good thick insole. And these are 4-season boots, and it's just, this is a classical method. They always have 2 centimeters more for each size. So my size is 11, but that's 11 plus 2 centimeters, because they're made to have a classical setup of 2 socks in them. So I had a liner sock and a thick, really the thickest smart wool sock I could find in wool.
I'll
And
just add that in the beginning he complained endlessly about how heavy his boots were
Yeah.
and how excited he was to get rid of them. By
yeah.
the end he was so happy he had
Yeah.
the shoes. Every time we walked through water he was like, I have waterproof boots. I have waterproof boots.
So you should break them in before, and my old boots were destroyed, so I had to buy them new. So the first week was agony, but when they were broken in, they have been awesome. And also when my legs adjusted to the weight. But in the beginning, I had a big problem keeping up with the trail runner people. But I think it's important what Pisa said, that in trail runners you can't stop. If you go into the real winter weather in the morning, you had to get going. You put them on and then you had to get going. And if it would have been freezing and winter conditions during the whole day, I would have recommended everybody to have something heavier. But because the sun came out quite fast and the weather during the day is so different from the night and the mornings, most systems here worked. You know, you can take a trail runner in there and make it work. It's just everything has a good side or a bad side. But I do think in the end that if you're talking about real weather, winter condition, something like this is what you have to do. But once again, the Sierra wasn't real winter conditions, and that way you could have a bit more choice of what you can make work, and with the sealskin option and all of this, that still works brilliantly. But for the more sensitive people, I would recommend something like this. But for the people I'm jealous of that can have functional feet all the time, it would have been lovely having a trail runner set up, and you can make it work.
We were very lucky with the weather window though.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
had very good weather the whole time. We had mostly blue skies almost every day, sometimes
Yeah.
fog, 1 or 2 hailstorms.
Yeah.
sometimes
Afternoon
rain,
rains. Afternoon
Afternoon
rains,
rains,
but
yeah.
they were usually quick.
But I was dry all the time, and at least talking to Lookout the whole time, I mean, his trench foot wasn't looking that good, and I was quite happy always being warm and dry. So, you know, but I always switched socks, so I had the same system as Stitches, switching at least 1 time a day and doing a more classical, heavy-duty take on it. But it was worth it in my mind. Yeah.
Worth it. It was worth it.
Yeah.
What about Loto?
I recommend sandal. I recommend sandal for all the Sierra, without spikes, without purple. Now, for me, it's different. So I recommend ultralight shoes because they dry really fast. We do the hike on the summer, so if we go early to the campsite, you can dry your shoes really fast in 1 hour, maybe a little bit more. And the only problem, I start the Sierra with the Ultralon Peak 6. It's a really flexible shoes, and this is why I broke my crampon flexible. But before I didn't know it's possible.
You had the K10s with the flex bar.
Yeah, so it's flexible, but my shoes it's too much flexible. So after this, I switch my shoes with the Topo shoes, a little bit more stronger in the base. So I don't hike too much with the crampon, but my crampon didn't break after this switch. So I recommend to hike with this, and it's not a joke to cross the river with sandal. It's great. So this is my technical, but sometimes I hike a long time with the feet wet. So this is the bad side of my choice.
That touches upon a big mistake that I made, which was I did not take river crossing shoes. So you'll see that almost all the creek crossings that I did were in bare feet, which means that you're in the water longer because you're trying to feel a good place, a safe place to put your foot that isn't going to jam up against a rock. And if a rock does roll over, then it crushes your toe, then it kind of puts you off balance. It was a really kind of stupid mistake to make. And I did one river crossing where Pisa threw his Crocs across the river to me, and I did it, and it was over in a flash, and my feet were warmer. So I would say with that sandals or Crocs or whatever or a spare pair of trail runners without insoles, whatever it is, take something in to cross the river in, so that you don't go in bare feet, but so that you have something that you can get wet and then change back into your dry shoes again. That would be a recommendation.
It's also nice when you get to camp, so you can actually put your main shoes out to dry and go around in sandals or whatever.
I can just give my take on gloves. I have a little bit of backcountry skiing experience, so I thought, okay, we're gonna be active and moving the whole time. We're gonna be fine. I'll just take I'll take a liner pair and an outer pair, like slightly thicker pair. And it was cold, definitely. And I had to add the Montbell shells, yeah, which they seemed super light and like not very useful, but they actually added a significant amount of warmth to my hands in the morning and allowed me to kind of ball up my fists a little bit. I think it's super critical to keep your hands warm because if you don't have your hands, you can't really use your trekking poles. Walking on the sun cuffs, I really struggled if my hands were, you know, in a Wakanda Forever position and I couldn't actually hold my trekking poles. And I was falling over on the sun cuffs. I just couldn't keep up in the mornings until my hands were warm.
I just want to add, I had to add a pair of winter mittens kind of halfway through the Sierra, because on that, so I started with just a pair of like liners and then sort of like a mid-weight type of glove on top, and I got kind of mild frostbite on Mather Pass from that. And a lot of that was because, you know, you're doing steep ice traverses. Sometimes you have to jam your hand into the snow. It just depends on what you're doing. But so after that, I added a pair of winter mittens, and I had some hand warmers that I would throw in the mittens, have them in my jacket in the morning while I was getting ready, so that when we started walking, I could put them on, and they were nice and warm, and I never had a problem again. So
I think you should think about your hands as you think about your layers, like Loto has here for the rest of your body. You have a liner that's like your shell base thing, and then you have your insulating layer like Loto's jacket here, so you actually have insulation gloves, and then you had an outer shell. I had that all the way through and I loved it personally, so yeah.
I used the same pair of Outdoor Research PL500s the whole way, and they advertised themselves as glove liners, and my hands were fine. If my hands were cold to start with, I wouldn't put them in the glove and they'd instantly warm up, but if I put my hands in, they wouldn't then get cold and I could put my hands in the snow. But then Pisa had the exact same pair of gloves and hated them, so it is also a personal preference with things.
And the ability you have in your hands.
Yes, I had a lot of dexterity in them, so they worked for me. But Pisa didn't like his pair at all, so it comes down to what you said about shoes, is it's a personal preference.
Yep.
So Peter and I turned up to Kennedy Meadows, and we were told you should buy snowshoes. We were advised that you must buy snowshoes. And we said, we'll just get to Bishop and we'll see if we need them. And Peter, how was it for you when we first hit snow?
We were lucky that we did not need the snowshoes.
Yes.
I recommend just taking spikes and crampons. Snowshoes are much more useful in flat powder. This was consolidated angled snow, and so they just were very useful, but only about 10% of the time, 20% of the time. And then even when they were useful, I was able to keep up with the group in just micro spikes. It was slightly higher effort. However, the rest of the 80%, I wasn't carrying an extra 4 pounds on my back. So it's not worth it generally to bring snowshoes.
That's the opinion of us as microspike and crampon users, but what about you guys as snow?
I don't know, I just say it's not worth it.
You
Just
no.
Well, I
agree.
I started with snowshoes, and I actually love. I mean, I think, and definitely Bushwack. Like, I loved my snowshoes. I mean, I thought that they, in very, very rare times, they were helpful, and I could see in other types of hikes, I would love using those snowshoes too, and they're actually really cool. But I just think that the price you pay carrying those things over passes and across traverses, for me, I knew pretty quickly that it just wasn't worth it, and that I was just gonna, deal with them for the first stretch and dump them after the first stretch. And I definitely did not regret dumping them. So,
I mean, there's a few things about snowshoes. First, they take some time to learn. It's not easy to walk with snowshoes. It's really fun once you learn how to do it.
It's also fun to watch people who don't know how to do it fall,
Yeah.
like ourselves.
For the Sierra, as it is you're spending a lot of time on traverses or steep, like going down or up, you need a lot of traction. Me and Jackpot both had Tubbs Alpine Flex, I think they're called, like really solid crampon. You could move with them pretty well, but yeah, all that makes them heavy. There is no like ultralight snowshoe you can use. It's gonna be pointless.
And I had the Northern Light version that's made for powder, and it was I can't say the word, but it was bad. Read up and choose the right snowshoe if you want to have a snowshoe. But I do agree that it's not worth it.
I know there's been a few people that went all the way with snowshoes and loved them. It's definitely a niche thing. Might for some people, maybe now it's when it's always a melt, like when it doesn't consolidate during night, might be more. But yeah, I also dumped them for the first week because it's just too heavy.
There are some years where there have been like late storms where there's a lot of fresh powder. That wasn't the case for us, so I can't comment. But that could be the one time where I would see maybe it's useful if there's a lot of late storms happening.
I will say they did work for one guy that I know. He is like a very large man. He's like 6'7" and like 200 pounds, and he eats an incredible amount of food. So his pack weighs 60 plus pounds, and so being that heavy with that pack weight, he was able to get a big set of snowshoes, and he would just start later in the mornings. He would start at like 6.
What was everyone's
And then
pack weight
snowshoe all day.
at Kennedy Meadows South? Starting out
50
for 7 days?
pounds.
40.
40.
35.
Yeah, 45.
45 pounds. Yeah.
39.
And for kilos, around 18 kilos.
20.
I don't know mine in kilos, sorry.
20, I guess.
45. It's
Yeah, you were
around
20.
44, it's 20.
35.
22.
44, it's
22.
20.
Okay.
So
And
45.
think about it like relative to your body
body
weight
weight.
also, because 45 pounds, a lot of people had 40 to 50, 40, 45 pound packs for the Sierra, but I'm not a heavy person at all. And so 45 pounds for me was pretty much just unmanageable for the first week. I mean, it was far too high a body percentage for me. So just keep in mind what you're,
We did get stronger.
we did get stronger,
Yeah.
but don't
Definitely do not go over a third of your body weight. That should
No.
be the absolute
Yes.
ceiling. And that's with water and food included.
Everything, yeah.
Everything included. Don't think that's your base weight and then carry out, 6 pounds of water and 20 pounds of food or something.
Layers wise?
Layers, if you want, can touch up on layers.
Layers, I loved my setup. I had sun hoodie, Senshi fleece. I had a wind shell, and I had a rain jacket, and also a down jacket. And then on the bottom, I mostly wore shorts actually, but I also wore leggings on very cold days, and rain pants for glissading, and just for an extra layer.
One thing I wanted to ask is the funniest moments of the Sierras. What were moments that stand out in your memory? I know that Pisa's got that memory of Bushwack's fall that he always tells a great
funny
story.
falls for sure.
It's like,
Yeah.
I have all his fault.
I was hiking behind Bushwack, and he was just over a snowbank, so I could only see his torso up. And this is the day where everybody was trying out their snowshoes for the first time. And I think Bushwack was learning the hardest. Took a lot of falls, and I just remember seeing his left foot go basically straight up in the air like a ballerina, and then him disappearing behind the snowbank, and I laughed so hard.
I was gonna say another fall of Bushwacks. This one had nothing to do with snowshoes though. So like we mentioned, there's a lot of micro terrain. So when you're in the forests, in between the trees, there's these crazy tree wells that create like mini ridges, and and you'd have to sort of like go across, kind of tightrope these little ridges between
It's
the
like
trees.
a knife's edge, yeah.
Yeah, like a
It's
little
like
knife's edge. And Bushwack was right behind me. And as I turn around, both of his legs fall on either side of the ridge. So he does like the splits and then, hits himself and sort of rolls over all the way down into one of the tree wells. And I just hear, oh, my crotch. And I think Stitches and I, actually there is a clip of that. There's video read afterwards. Stitches and I just belly laughing for a solid 10 minutes.
What happened?
He did a split over the mound. I just heard from the bottom of the tree well, my crotch!
But yeah, falls, lots of funny falls. Some of them my own. So
Yeah.
Maybe the funny moment, it's the ski moment or the slide on the snow too. You can do like
A boot ski.
boot ski, or maybe you say luge.
Luge.
Yeah,
Sliding,
and the slide. Yeah, slide moment was fun.
I just loved. I mean, there were lots of falls, but one of Jackpot. I was gonna say Bushwack one too, but he's got too many. So Jackpot. We had this one day where we were mostly. We were on dirt for a long stretch, and so afterwards I was like, I'm gonna keep my micro spikes off. I'm not gonna wear them. All of us didn't have micro spikes, but Jackpot was the only one with micro spikes, and he was the one who fell. Validation.
I also had that other fall. I don't know if you remember. I was on snowshoes and I got like caught in a tree, and the tree just sort of slowly lowered me to the ground. It just didn't let me pass, and I just went down in slow motion. Yeah.
Worth it?
I can't remember.
Nothing positive.
I did not laugh for 5 weeks.
No.
Remember.
For me, it's actually that we already mentioned it. Jackpot mentioned it in the meadow there, where everybody just was laughing, and I couldn't actually speak. I was so tired. I couldn't form words. I was speaking like in a tongue Swedish and some English, speaking like a toddler, like tree, dirt, and just single words, and I couldn't stop laughing. It was, it was great. Yeah.
So another one is, there's this one traverse that when in the snow is known to be extremely dangerous, and we found ways to navigate around it, and we were kind of having this discussion just about what the traverse is like, and we had gotten reports from another group that said this traverse is a death trap. and so we were kind of passing that information around, and Loto, who has done an amazing job, but is English, he's still getting more familiar with English as he's gone through the PCT. He's trying to keep up with the conversation, and he just looks at us and goes, what is it? You say death trap? What is death trap? So we had to explain to him that a death trap was indeed something you should avoid when it comes to this traverse. But it was a really funny moment.
I think for me, I don't have one particular moment, so to disappoint everyone, but I just remember so many times where we as a group were just walking around talking and laughing, and you've mentioned the time where we got out of Yosemite, or into Yosemite, sorry, and then we're absolutely laughing and delirious, and I love those moments where we were all just joking and riffing on each other and stuff like that. There was definitely a lot of camaraderie and small egos. There wasn't really anyone who kind of got absolutely insulted when they were the butt of the joke, or you can see everyone has been laughing at their own falls and things that happened, and there's been moments where things have happened, like I've been following someone too close, and as we walk through the trees, a branch swings back and hits me in the face, and they look around to see if you're okay, and as soon as they realise they're okay, they belly laugh at the fact that you just got a branch to the face. And so I think that not having an ego and being able to laugh at yourself has really helped us have a really good team chemistry, and I just remember so many moments that I can't pin one down and say that was the best, but yeah, there was definitely a lot of laughter and jokes that I really did appreciate, and I think got us through those stressful situations. You get off a creek crossing, and 5 minutes later, you're laughing and joking, and as if you didn't just spend an hour trying to cross a class 5 rapid on a branch that's about 6 inches wide.
We the day that we got that, we had to swim that river. I remember I had no personality. I was so cold, and I was sitting on lookout sleeping pad trying to warm up with Worth It's Down booties on my feet and curled up in lookout sleeping quilt, and I was not responding to anything. And the moment that I knew that I was better was when Bushwack made a joke, and I laughed at it. I was like, oh wow, this is good. I'm back, I think. And the joke was that every single day his quilt is always wet from condensation. No matter what he's doing, no matter where he's camped, no matter if he's cowboy camping without even a tent, it's always wet. And so we were joking that he made a joke that after the river crossing, everything was dry except his quilt.
Yeah. And any last bits of advice that we haven't mentioned for people going through, and like,
May I start?
go for it.
It's quite short. Always go up and look for yourself. There is a lot of fear mongering out there, and I know we've been trying in our Facebook post and our Instagram post. It's hard to be balanced. I think Jackpot is the one that does it the best, in my opinion. He's done some amazing Facebook posts if you are in the groups and can look at those. But it's a mixture for us of giving you the right information from our perspective. Right is the wrong word, but the way we have seen it, at least. And then, you know, not being too overtly scaring you. Because a lot of times we have gotten information, and when we got there, from our skill level or comfort level, it's been fine. And sometimes the other way around. So always go up and look for yourself. You can always turn back and have a good plan and exit strategies, and you'll just be fine. You'll make it. Yeah.
Yeah. For me, it's take your time and have fun.
One thing I don't know that we ever really mentioned it, but one thing that was really valuable to us is we really got to know, for the most part, at least somebody in our group branched out and got to know the other groups around us. There aren't that many groups, at least when we went through, there weren't that many groups going through, and we pretty much had those olive branches out there, so we were able to get information from people around us.
And give information back too.
And give information back. Although we didn't have anyone like immediately behind us, so that was just the way it worked out. We, I think, ended up getting a lot more information than we were able to pass on. But just take the time to do that, you know, in Kennedy Meadows, see who's around you or whatever when you're in Bishop or wherever it is, Kearsarge. And you can really, there's a lot of information exchange that can happen. But at the same time, be ready to be flexible, because we got, in some cases, we got information that was spot on, and it led us to the exact crossing of a river. In other cases, the water levels looked completely different when we got there, and we had to swim where somebody else walked across a log or whatever. So I think it can be really beneficial. Just be prepared to be flexible as well. So you know, kind of a combination of both.
Have a Garmin. If you have the money, have a Garmin, because most people are saying, why isn't there that much comments on far out? And we should be better at that. But at the same time, as Jackpot said, we were mostly communicating and writing our stuff on Garmin, because we have a Garmin network with all the groups around us, and sending in-reach messages is free, regardless of your thing you have on the Garmin subscription. Thank you. So all of our information was on the Garmin, so at least a Garmin per group, and also the stitches with a helicopter to have that SOS button, the safety going up there. It's well invested money. So please, or if not that one, something else. There's different brands out there.
Spot device or something.
Yeah, some spot device. Yeah.
Loto, any advice?
My advice, I think you don't need to be worried about all the section of the PCT. This is really nice to start on the desert, to take a level for your stuff, for you know how you can hike physically, mentally. why do you need to buy for the food? I don't know what I will find on the market on the first week in the US. So yeah, take your time for learn day by day, and everything it's okay. Take a wise decision, or yeah, be aware for the river crossing, the part really dangerous, the steep section. Stay really aware at this moment. Yeah.
I would just say take more pictures of the people. I don't think I did that enough. I think I tried, but I think I could have done more. When I look back at my pictures, I just think like, wow, there were so many great moments. The views are beautiful, yes, but it definitely is the people that make it what it is. And that's what I want to remember.
Pisa?
Just know that it's going to be hard and very fulfilling, and do as much as you're comfortable with, and don't feel like you need to do this to have a successful hike. If it's not fun, then it's not fun, but try to make it fun. Check out Prosecco.
Yeah. All right.
Yours?
Sorry?
Yours?
I think just harking back to what I said about the river crossings, like don't think that it's a good idea to do it barefoot. I did it barefoot. It was not a good idea. I was very, very slow. I was in the water a lot longer than I needed to be. But if I just had some river crossing shoes, I would have been across all those rivers a lot faster, and my feet wouldn't have got as cold. So that's I think that's one major thing that sticks out. Yeah, and be prepared to switch things up, however you expect it to be, or whatever shoes you've got, or traction device, or something like that. We have all had to buy new equipment. We've all had to change out something.
Many mistakes.
So, have a budget that you can change out that equipment and not worry. You got to be prepared and have the budget to make adjustments and be adaptable, both in mentality and also the things that you're carrying, and know what that weight limit is for your pack as well, where it becomes a point of diminishing returns of carrying too much stuff. Last thing, overall, what's your overall feeling? Your overall feeling of completing the Sierras?
Relief.
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 Pride.
I was gonna
Pride.
say pride, relief,
Yeah,
and just that I could hike the PCT 50 times over, and the experience would never be the same as
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
totally unique. And
Privileged. I feel very privileged to have come through this year.
Yeah.
And I also feel like finally I can really hike the PCT. I can start now. I don't have to worry about the Sierra anymore.
I feel gratefulness,
Yeah.
and it's really great to see how all but some have grown more through this experience. Myself, but especially Pisa, I think, for me, as he stepped up. He's a young man, but I mean, he's a true leader in my opinion. And to see him with training wheels on fire go from what he said his feeling going into the Sierra and coming out like Superman, that's it's been awesome to watch and see. Yeah. It stands out for me at least.
Superman.
Yeah.
This is the last word.
Yeah.
Superman.
Someone Photoshop him in the cape.
Thank you.
It's hard with compliments. I can't take them either.
What about your feeling overall from coming through this?
Well, yeah, I just feel like it's the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, and I feel the last two stretches I felt stronger and just so much better about it, and I feel like it's just been a really wonderful experience to learn this new skill and to feel confident finally, navigating through snow and doing traverses and doing river crossings. It's totally new to me, and I'm so grateful to have learned it with everybody around me.
I think we grew a lot, all of us as hikers and also as people too. I think the Sierra, what they say, the cliche is the Sierras show you what you're made of. And I think that's very true. In those hard moments, you figure out like, okay, wow, I can handle this and I can do hard things.
Well, thank you all for you know, having me as part of your group and being part of the vlogs for the last 35, 37 days, whatever it was. I'm sure everybody here is going to really enjoy getting to know you as they watch the vlogs coming out over the next few weeks, and I'm going to put links to everybody's socials in the description, so please go and check them out and give everyone a follow on Instagram or whatever platform it is that I've linked to, that there's their chosen platform. I want to say thank you for joining us, and we'll see you in the next few vlogs.
Thank you.
Somebody just shoot at it?
Yeah. Bushwack.
Is that what we think of cut before that?
Oh no, this is still running.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Alright.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
Oh my
All right,
ass.
okay.
Oh my ass. Oh.